Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Welcome back.
Thank you. How are you doing, Teresa?
Good, thanks.
Just so folks know, I've already started the recording, but we'll get going in a minute. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to take out any AI note takers.
Good morning, Annika. It's nice to see you.
Morning, Nancy. How are you?
I'm fine. How you doing?
I'm good.
Good.
My first day back in person in the office, so very exciting.
When I saw that we had this meeting scheduled today and I knew this was your first week back, I thought you were a brave person.
I'm excited. I don't think it's going to be too challenging.
You'll do great
Hi,
at
Meg.
it.
Annika, welcome back.
Thank you.
Thanks.
What's
Yeah,
that?
how are you doing? Are you having like complete culture shock of like being in a chair in an office? And
No, it feels good to be back, and Summer did a great job keeping things afloat in my absence,
She
and
sure
I know
did.
you all did too. So it feels good to be back.
Yeah, she did a
Good.
wonderful job.
She
Yes.
definitely did you proud.
Yeah.
Brittany, it's good to see you. I haven't seen you in a little bit. That's exciting. And thanks for the baby pictures, Annika. Those were great. Keep them coming.
So, Brittany, thank you for joining the meeting the other day. It was nice to see you on that.
It was nice to hear all the things that are going on. Haven't been able to dial in quite some time, and so just here today to cover for Secretary Strickland. So.
Okay, it looks like we have lots of folks joining, and we can go ahead and get started in a minute, just going over the agenda. So I'm Annika Lefebvre. I am the Food Systems Resilience Coordinator, and this is the Maryland Food System Resiliency Council's bi-monthly meeting. So welcome, everyone. We're going to take roll for all of the members of the council, but if others could go ahead and introduce themselves in the chat with your name and affiliation, we would be very grateful. And I will turn it over to Nancy Nunn, our co-chair, to give a quick welcome before we get going with roll call.
Okay, so welcome to the meeting. Actually, this is more of a thank you to all of you. I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your busy schedules. It's a awful time of year. I know that in addition to dealing with budgets and whatever, you also are dealing with end of school year, graduation. So thank you for participating. Thanks to everyone that helped out with the recommendations that we'll be looking at today. Council members, work group members, state agencies for providing us with thoughtful and quick turnarounds. And most of all, thank you to Secretary Strickland. He's unable to join us today, but really MDEM have been so supportive, the MDEM staff, of this food council, why they've dealt with the flooding in Western Maryland and their regular task, and we really appreciate it. Welcome back, Annika. And I don't know if Summer's on this call, but Summer was wonderful, jumped in at a very quick pace time of year, and so we want to thank her also. So Annika, back to you.
Thanks, Nancy. And I realized that I neglected to really go over our agenda today, so thank you for giving us a teaser with that, Nancy. So just jumping back, we are excited to have Allie McStudy here from the Maryland Department of Health, who's going to share a bit about their exciting program with the LHIC, the Local Health Improvement Coalition's food security work groups. And so we're excited to hear from her. And from there, what Nancy mentioned previously is we will be checking in about things for the annual report. And we wanted to give an opportunity to discuss the draft recommendations that the committees have been working so hard on over the past few months to give other council members an idea of what they will be asked to vote on later on this summer. Okay. Any questions on that before we take roll? Nope. Okay, let's get going. So Jesse Albright, are you here? Nope. Daphne Altima Johnson? Emily Bauer? Heather Bruskin? Beth Brewster?
I'm here.
Hey, Beth. Michelle Caruso?
I'm here.
Good morning. Delegate Charkoudian?
I'm here. Good morning.
Good morning. Anne-Marie Hart Bookbinder?
Here. Good morning.
Good morning. Dr. Escobar? Senator Hester?
I'm here. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Nick Hargrove? LaMonica Jones?
Good morning. I'm here.
Good morning. I believe Dr. Karki was not able to join us. Is anyone here on behalf of Dr. Karki? Meg Kimmel, we know, is here. Lisa
Good morning.
Lackenmeyer?
I'm here.
Good morning, Meg. Taylor Lefebvre? Dr. Lansing?
Here. Thank you.
And Grace Leatherman?
Here. Thanks.
Joe Liu? Yeah. Hi, Grace. Joe Liu? Steve McHenry?
Hi, this is Stacy Kabovsik, and Steve's going to join. He's just going to be a little late.
Thanks, Stacy. Good morning. Joe Malone?
Good morning. Welcome back, Annika.
Thank you. Nancy is here. Mark Powell? Okay. Carl Schlegel?
I'm here.
Hi, Carl. Teresa Stahl, we know, is here. And Diana Taylor. Okay, and do we have Sarah Weitzel here for Shannon McDonald?
I'm here.
Thank you. And Leslie Sessom Parks. And I saw your comment, Daphne. Thank you. So let's see. It appears that we do have a quorum, so we can go ahead and take a vote on our meeting minutes from last month or 2 months ago. Sorry about that. So the next FSRC meeting is going to be on August 7th. We won't be meeting again as a full council before the report publication progresses. So just to put that on everyone's radar. I have sent out a reminder this morning for voting council members to please go ahead and submit nominations for co-chair elections for both the full council and any committees which you are a voting member for. So the nominations are due next Friday, and then we will be sending out voting forms, and votes will be taking place through the end of the month. Does anyone have any questions about the election process for the council? Okay. With that, I sent out the meeting minutes yesterday that we had great help on here with the MDM staff, but I'm sorry that it was last minute. Does anyone, or Nancy, would you like to take it away with the meeting minutes?
Sure. Does anyone, I hope everybody's had a chance to review them. Does anyone have any corrections or edits? Okay, seeing none, We'd like to take a vote in favor of the minutes. All those in favor, if you can raise your hand or say aye.
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 Okay. If you can put down your hands, all those opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. So the meeting minutes have passed. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Nancy and everyone. And with that, I think we're ready to get started with our guest speaker. Allie, do you want to share your own slides or would you like me to help?
You can share. That would be totally fine.
Okay, so we have Allie here, Allie McStudy. She's the Program and Grants Team Manager with the Maryland Department of Health for Chronic Disease Prevention and Control. And we're so excited to hear about the project that she has been working on. Let me pull up your slides.
Hi, everyone. As Annika said, I'm with the Maryland Department of Health. I am now, I was previously the Program Grants Team Manager. The name is now changed to the Community Prevention Team Manager to align with some changes in leadership. And I am with the Center for Chronic Disease Prevention and Control. My team primarily works on a lot of upstream work in relation to healthy weight and nutrition. So obviously food security falls under us, as well as adult and child weight. We have the Community Supported Agriculture Project and a bunch of other fun upstream work that really focuses on trying to get our Marylanders a healthy and nutritious lifestyle. Next slide, please. So in April, we began what is now a food insecurity project. Previously, it was the State Partnership for Improving Nutrition and Equity Program, which was a CDC-funded grant. Unfortunately, we did not get the follow-on, which was called SPAN. So about a year and a half later, we were able to work this into our Preventive Health and Health Services Block Grant funding to be able to continue the work that was began during that SPINE grant. So we issued a competitive application to provide funds to up to 5 local health departments to support their local health improvement coalitions, or LHICs, in jurisdictions with or without an active food security council. So the target LHDs had previously had to develop food security goals and action plans under their food security under their LHIC plans. During that time frame, a lot have either changed their focus, have gone to the wayside. But obviously we know that food security is such an integral thing for our communities. So they are all actively working to either redevelop their food security teams, or they're hiring someone to focus on these types of areas, to be embedded in LHICs to support their work. So there's a lot of interesting and exciting things coming along within the food security sphere. Next slide, please. The scope of work. So starting calendar year 2025, MDH allocated $100,000 to 5 local health departments, Baltimore City, Charles, Howard. Currently, Garrett is not funded. We are working with them to get the required documents to get funded, and St. Mary's County. They each received an award up to $20,000. I also was able to offer them an additional $10,000 starting July 1st through September 30th if they're interested. So I'm currently waiting for them to let me know if they would like to add that to their FY26 budgets. And they are required to address a minimum of 2 food security goals developed by their LHIC food security subcommittees. And so some of the things that they're working upon could be increased representation, outline additional activities in their action plan, and building partnerships with organizations that address food security and other social determinants of health. Obviously, these are not exhaustive of everything that they can do. They have a lot of flexibility and freedom to decide how they want to move their projects forward. They are required to either conduct an assessment for food security needs and submit the findings, or submit findings from a recent prior assessment. So they could utilize secondary data from reliable sources, such as the Johns Hopkins Center for a Livable Future. They could also collect primary data through community surveys or stakeholder forums. Like I said, I'm very flexible. I allow them, as long as it is evidence-based, makes sense, to kind of move forward with however they would like. Next slide, please. They are required to submit the LHIC's Food Security Action Plan and provide a summary paragraph identifying at least 2 activities from one of the food security goals that they are planning to work on during this project timeframe. That being said, I did find out, as I had mentioned, that some of them no longer have these subcommittees, or the subcommittees have changed focuses. So they are working on either integrating food security back into a current subcommittee or redeveloping a new one to focus on this work. As with everything, we want to make sure that they demonstrate capacity for program sustainability as this funding either transitions or we're able to fund other counties. So we want to really set people up for success and not just continue to focus on the same counties throughout the state. They're required to participate in monthly community practice calls. Our first one's actually going to be in the next 2 weeks, the week of the 23rd. And that will primarily be sharing of knowledge between the different counties, gives them opportunities to ask each other questions, talk about how their work is going, and also have FaceTime with me to discuss any issues that everyone's facing, and work to kind of try and figure them out together. As with all our projects, they are required to abide by the Americans with Disability Act, and they do sign within their submissions for application a form saying that they will uphold these all these requirements within the act. Next slide, please. So some of the performance measures, these are all required. Number of food security needs assessments. We're also looking for the baseline status and then the final change in any metrics. The number of activities implemented, the number of LHIC food security subcommittee meetings, the number of LHIC food security subcommittee meetings with at least 80% of members in attendance, number of constituents served, number of community partners, number of partner meetings, number of food security councils developed or enhanced, the number of sustainability plans, and the number of activities from the LHIC Community Action Plan implemented. In addition to this, they were required to come up with some of their own performance measures. So each county had probably 1 to 3 additional performance measures that they wanted to focus on. Next slide, please. Deliverables and outcomes. Again, all the ones listed here are required, and then they were also required to add at least 2 additional deliverables. So each one did vary within this county as well. But the required ones from us were to conduct 1 assessment for food security needs or submit previous findings, reestablish or continue 1 food security subcommittee, and then actively participate in that committee, implement at least 2 activities from at least 1 food security goal within the LHIC action plan, and then develop at least 2 performance measures and 1 deliverable specific to the county. And at the end of this, the outcomes that we're looking for are establishing or updating baseline data for food security needs in the county, enhancing food security subcommittees by executing activities to implement food security goals, and then implementing activities to address food security within the jurisdiction. Next slide, please. Next slide.
Sorry, it's
Oh,
stuck for some reason.
oh, no problem.
You know,
Actually, what, that might
Holly,
be
this is the last one I have.
I was just
for
gonna
you.
say that might be the last slide now that I'm thinking about it. Because I wanted to provide a pretty succinct summary. But I'm open to any questions, any comments. I'd be happy to chat about it with anybody offline or right now. I'll put my information in the chat. So if you have any interest in further communication, just let me know. Also, if you in the future have any interest in hearing about our work within different projects, like I said, we do a lot of upstream work. So we're always looking for new partners within all areas of the state to focus on healthy weight and nutrition for both adults and for children. So that being said, thank you. And I appreciate you giving me the time to talk about it.
Great. Thank you so much, Allie. And I know that I have a few questions and I'd like to open it up to our members and attendees to ask any questions as well. Does anyone want to jump in? Did I hear a hand raised?
I did see a hand. You can feel free to come off mute.
Yeah, thank you. All right, well, I'll jump in. Allie, one of the things that I wanted to ask about was about the Howard County Food Council. And I know that one of the things that I first was excited about when I learned about the swine program was that some of these LHIC food security subcommittees were interested in helping establish food councils in additional local jurisdictions in Maryland. And I'm curious if you could talk a little bit more about how that worked for Howard County and what other food security subcommittees are interested in doing in that domain.
So basically our intent is to actually, depending on how long that takes, how much money we have, all that stuff, to support them to eventually all have the councils. So whether that work is, getting them as far as Howard has been able to go, or getting them, I know in Garrett, they were working on getting their first, actual setup for a food organization to really focus on the work, but also be able to get out food for the community. So Nancy, yes, we do consider regional food councils, not for this specific grant, just because we were only focusing on those who were not able to continue the work because we did not get the follow-on award from the CDC to continue the work. But in the future, we are hoping to open it up to more groups. But we do primarily want everyone to work within partnerships within the county, specifically with the local health departments and whatever the partner agency is that they are looking to work for on the specific topic. Yeah, and it's a very broad answer, but yes, we are trying to support them to all established food councils at some point. Howard has just been able to kind of flourish with the initial funding and getting the support and everything that they need. So everyone's just at a different point in where they're at, but I do try and, between attending these meetings and finding out information, I do try to share things with them and include them. I did have them come to the last food council convening, or invited them at least, and I think a lot of them did come. So
great, thank you. And I saw that Michelle asked in the chat how the jurisdictions were selected. I was going to ask for a little more elaboration on that too, Allie. Just I know that you said that these were the ones who participated in the previous version of the Spine grant. But I guess how did they become the 5 counties out of all of Maryland to be in that role in the first place too?
I actually was not here for the initial grant, so I honestly cannot speak to that. I know we do put out all of our grants, we usually put out to every county unless we're looking at a specific metric, which could have been the most need with a specific metric. So I don't know exactly how it was determined at the time, who the application was to. They could have just been the only ones at the time to apply, or they could have been hand selected by the evaluation team to specifically apply. So it really just varies dependent on the time frame and what metrics that we're looking at the time.
This is Lisa. I was part of the team that was engaged in that initial. It was an RFP that was put out, and I do believe it was just the 5 that had submitted, but part of the criteria was looking at areas that didn't have food councils. So speaking to Ellie's point, that part of the goal was to ensure that it was a building capacity of food councils across the state. So that was a portion of it, was really, it was kind of looking at areas and counties that, and it was specifically through the LHIC. So.
Thanks, Lisa. Lisa's been a great partner in a lot of food security work with me, especially being only a year and a half into this position. So she's been able to provide a lot of historical context to things. Cameron?
Thank you. I'm just curious if you know of any projects or activities that will be specifically focused on older adults happening.
I do not. We have a couple of projects that are specific to focusing on inclusion of the disability community. We have, and that is pretty broad in the sense of we do offer the Walk with Ease program from the Arthritis Foundation as a evidence-based lifestyle change program. So not specific, but it's not something that we wouldn't be excited to talk about with you if you have any interest.
Thank you.
Allie, I guess I'm curious, can you speak a little bit to like what you see as the future of this program? Do you think that other counties will be eligible to participate in the future? And if so, what would be the timeline for that?
Well, obviously everyone knows the federal budget situation. Unfortunately, our funding basically hinges on the current budget, specifically because we are funding all of this work specifically through the Preventative Health and Health Services Block Grant. So we are waited on the edge of our seat, waiting on the edge of our seats to find out if this will be continued in the fiscal year 26 funding bill. That being said, it is something that we at the center really do want to continue to focus on. I know our previous leadership who has just transitioned out of the position for the Deputy Secretary of Health was really focused on food security work. I'm hoping that whoever takes his position going forward will also be really supportive in moving that work forward as well. So I don't have timelines, unfortunately, at this time. I do hope to continue it come the fall, which would be the October 1st start date. But right now, like I said, we're all kind of, as you guys know, in a holding pattern about if we can provide funding to certain projects and stuff.
Thanks, Allie. Any other questions for Allie? Okay, well, thank you so much, Allie. We really appreciate it, and we're really excited about this program, and I'm excited that the rest of the council got to hear a little bit more about it. Is it okay if we share your slides with the council members?
Mhm.
Great. Thank you.
Like I said, I'll put my information in the chat too if you guys have any questions you think of later on. Thanks.
Okay, everyone, I'm going to pull our slides back up, and we're a little ahead of schedule, which is great. We're going to keep going with our discussion on the annual report. Let's see. Here we go. Okay. So Nancy, I'm going to turn it over to you to share a little bit about the annual report timeline updates and kind of kick things off for us in this discussion.
Okay, so many of you are tired of looking at this schedule probably, but I do want to say again, thank you to everybody that kept the annual report on time this year. And I think it was a really good process. We changed the process somewhat, working through the recommendations. So we are actually between the May 23rd deadline. We do have the majority of state agencies, I think all of the state agencies, comments back on the recommendations. Work groups have met as late as Monday to finalize their draft recommendations. The next thing that will happen is the voting forms will be sent to the committee members. So look for that at the beginning of next week. And then the deadline for committees to vote for final recommendations will occur at the end of the month. And at that point, MDEM really puts their magic to it and creates the draft report to come back to us with the feedback form. And that's a really important step. So, and it's a fairly long document. So the sooner that people can get their feedback to MDEM, it's really helpful. Following that, the final report draft will be issued along with voting forms for the members. And again, really important to get those voting forms back to us. I would really say for the council members and for everyone on this call, while you go through this process, the next step is we will have the report, but how do we make sure this report gets in front of as many people as we possibly can get it in front of to get a broad range of support for these recommendations? So if you have ideas of people that it should be getting in front of, organizations, if you know of meetings in the next couple of months that we can present the report to, please let Annika know, because that's a really important step in this process. So Annika, take it away with the recommendations.
Thank you, Nancy. Yes, and I just wanted to highlight as well that the deadline to vote for the final report publication in August is just a couple days in advance of our next council meeting. And so that would be a great opportunity to really talk about next steps for perhaps hosting another listening session, which was very successful this past year, or other opportunities for getting the word out about your very thoughtful recommendations that you've been working on. And I wanted to reiterate Nancy's gratitude and say thank you to all of the council members for spending time in drafting this year's recommendations, and also to the state agencies who took the time to provide very thoughtful feedback about those recommendations. So right now, what we are doing is working through the feedback from the state agencies, and we'll get the drafts out to the committee members who will then vote on which ones they would like to present to the full council. It's a little bit of a drawn out process. So full council, the council members who are not on the committees will get their first crack at providing feedback later on in June. Does anyone have any questions about the process? Okay, well, feel free to reach out if you do have any questions or need any clarification about anything. But we really wanted to take this opportunity to make sure that there was time for discussion with the full council about the different recommendations that are on the docket for this year. And so we were hoping to kind of provide an abstract for each of those recommendations and call on the ad hoc work group members to share any additional comments or answer any questions that council members might have. So I'll just jump right in. These are the recommendations coming out of the Distribution and Access Committee, and they have been so busy. I've been very amazed with all of the hard work that everyone has put into it. This one is about strengthening capacity for local food councils. And so as our longer term members may know, we have seen several versions of local food council recommendations come out of the Distribution and Access Committee over the years. And strengthening capacity for local food councils is something that is very explicitly included in the FSRC's statute. So this year, the proposition is for the creation of an aligned network across the state of the local food councils, kind of like what the Communication Coordination Committee has already started to do. But in this year's recommendation, there is going to be a suggestion that there are regional coordinators to help facilitate these connections and provide additional support at the regional and local levels for these food councils. Can I ask for anyone to jump in who worked on this recommendation to fill in the gaps of what I'm missing and answer any questions? Who worked on this one? Michelle, were you on there?
I wasn't super involved in this one this year.
Okay.
Annika, this is Stephanie Lansing. I can give a little bit more information on this one. So I think you did a good job of explaining it. The idea is this is a one that costs something. We are asking for the state to have a regional coordinator, so that should be clear. But it is something that the idea that we have all of this work that's doing in pockets of different areas, and we really need coordination to work across, and to have best practices from one food council being, someone who can really help and hold the hands of other food councils to explain what those are. So this is really what it's about, is that we have food councils. We also have in the health departments, so not just formal food councils, but also other people that are doing this work. And these coordinators would help bridge the gap across the state.
Thanks, Dr. Lansing. And Grace, did you have something to add?
Nope.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, thank you. No worries. Thank you, Dr. Lansing. And are there any other questions about this recommendation? Okay, moving on. Cold storage. So there is another iteration of the cold storage recommendation in the works for this year. It is an evolution of last year's recommendation, but pretty similar. So the idea is to create a pilot grant program to administer across local jurisdictions for community-based organizations and I believe agricultural entities to apply for cold storage facilities. And the purpose would be to reduce wasted food across the state and promote food security by through food preservation. And so they're asking for, I believe the number is actually $6.4 million now to administer the grant program and to fund 20 large walk-in cold storage units and 40 small cold storage units. There's also going to be a sum set aside for maintenance costs. Any additions to that cold storage one that I'm missing from work group members? Questions? Okay, moving on. This one is about the community eligibility provision, and I'm hoping that someone who worked on this can help weigh in because I've just kind of scratched the surface of this recommendation myself. This one is about providing universal access to free breakfast and lunch at all schools in Maryland. And so I believe the request is that they would like to see a state supplement to help schools with lower eligibility participate fully in the program and receive additional technical assistance from the State Department of Education. Am I missing anything with this one? Ad hoc work group members.
Hi, this is Anne Marie. Julia Gross,
Hi.
who's on the call, really, did a lot of this work. So she can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, for this one, we just had concerns about how this might have to change based on what happens at the federal level, and if that, increases the number of schools that would then need support for this to work.
Thanks, Anne Marie. And Julia, did you want to add anything?
No, I think you really covered it. I mean, we've seen the benefit of universal meals with schools that are using CEP currently, but like you mentioned in the recommendation says CEP is not exactly financially viable for every eligible school, so would require state funding to make sure that all of those schools that are eligible are able to opt into it as a step towards a fully universal meals program in Maryland.
Thanks, Julia. And I'd like to add that the folks from MSDE really put some thought into their responses to this draft recommendation. So I wanted to say a special thank you to them for taking the time to look through it carefully and provide very constructive feedback. Any other questions or thoughts on the CEP one? All right, local food points of sale. This one was created with the intention to create dedicated points of local food sales across local jurisdictions. Am I remembering this one correctly? Let's see. There are a couple that were similar. Teresa, will you help me with this one? I think that you were on this committee or on this work
Yes.
group.
Yes, this is one that I worked on. What did you need clarified about it?
What is this recommendation about, and
It's
basically the
okay.
nuts and bolts of it?
Sure. It's basically saying that we need a position at the state level that can coordinate these programs because they're in different departments. And so within the different departments of health or human services, there are people, or agriculture, there are people working to increase farmers, to increase sales, to increase participation in the programs. But if we had one person coordinating these programs with these different departments, that it could really do great work to move the participation and the redemption of these benefits forward. And so we just looked at the numbers of, the number of dollars that are allocated versus what are spent by beneficiaries of these benefits. And we see there's such a gap that we need to do something. And we think this coordinator could not only help improve the participation rates within the programs, but also move things forward through grants, other grants that might be available. And that's all I can think of. I don't know if anybody else, Cameron's on, if he has anything to add. Lisa, you're on also.
Yeah, I didn't do this one.
Okay. So I think that, that's basically it. One of our challenges that we've kind of left on here for MDEM to help with is just where it would be housed. Originally, the thought was that the Farmers Market Association at the state level was doing some of this work, and that went away, and then that work went to SMATIC, and they really took the lead with the Maryland market money, but didn't have capacity for all of the objectives that we have in this recommendation. And so there was a question, would it be within an agency, or would it be separate from an agency in a nonprofit, for example? And it's landed that we are recommending it to be within the Department of Agriculture. So then the question becomes, where does the funding for the PIN come from for the position? And so we did make a recommendation for the amount of funding that we think would be enough to have someone take this job and stick with it, be retained. But then we weren't sure if a contractual might be better. Mark?
Thanks. So just a couple of things. The Maryland Market Money Program, as most of you guys probably know, is coming to MDA July 1st. So we'll have FMMP, Maryland Market Money here. And we're hiring 2 new people to work on Maryland Market Money specifically. So I guess a question I have is, how much money did you guys put in this recommendation for staff for this position, the coordinator?
We put in, let me see here, and we have this pending. MDEM's looking over the estimated total package for salary, benefits, and fringe at 150, and then it would be adjusted by MDEM. We did say their source for that. We know there is a place to estimate compensation for these type of positions, but we didn't have that, at the end. So we left it with a parentheses, based on MDEM's adjustment.
Okay. Essentially, we're trying to do some of this right now, or definitely will be July 1 when Maryland Market Money comes over. So, certainly if there was some way to get funds to hire somebody, it would be welcome. I just don't know if that's going to happen, but sounds good. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And we did say, if a contractual position might be more appealing, to consider that as well. We just couldn't come to a decision about that.
Thanks so much, Teresa. That was immensely helpful. Any other questions? Okay, Teresa, you might be on the hook for a couple of these. Clarifying the Bill Emerson Good Samaritan produce donation law. So if I understand this one correctly, this one is about produce that is produced at community sites and schools, and how that produce can be used. Like, there is some confusion perhaps about whether a school garden can use its produce in its cafeteria or for tastings or educational purposes. If a church-based community garden is allowed to donate their produce to congregation members, things like that. I think there's some confusion about what is allowed within the parameters of food safety. Is that correct, Teresa?
Yes.
And so this recommendation is asking for additional state level clarification about what is allowed and how produce grown on site for these community-based organizations and institutions can use the food that they grow.
Yes. I've seemed to have lost my recommendation on my screen. I'm sorry. Lisa, you are on here, and if you could.
Yeah, I mean, that you did a great job summarizing it. So yeah, it's really that clarity. I mean, it's a federal law, so we can't like change it, but it was clarifying it for Maryland, kind of some of the definitions. And in regards to, yeah, exactly what you said, that it's just kind of how it's written is in regards to, I think the terminology says like local producers. And so kind of what that definition is and, you know, just helping to kind of both clarify it and then provide the technical assistance and tools so people know, you know, that they're engaged in that they're covered by it.
And so this wasn't one that required funding. It basically, there is a law and they are covered, but people aren't aware of that necessarily. And so they're hesitant to donate for that reason. And so we think it would be important to make that clarification so people can grow their own food and donate it as needed without being concerned of any repercussions.
One question I have for maybe you, Lisa, or for both of you is there a way to get the word out about such a clarification if it was made to these community sites? Like maybe, I'm just curious how that update would be broadcast to the relevant sites. Is that something that University of Maryland could help with, or who would take the lead in getting the word out?
I think there's a variety. I mean, MSD, you know, it's a lot of it, like the school garden stuff could be, you know, there's trainings through MSD. There's a number of different things. I think that's often the initial motivation for this was school gardens, though it expanded because there's other things like libraries actually will have sometimes a community garden that will donate to to a food pantry. So there's, you know, it kind of has these, you know, other ones that became included in this, but the initial was school gardens and kind of that, are they covered in this Good Samaritan always? And so I do think working to have guides and then having those go out to MSDE and schools. And I think there's mechanisms for that.
Thank you so much. Any other questions on this recommendation? Okay, moving on. Thank you both. Streamlining the permitting process for food tastings and demonstrations. So I believe that this one was kind of highlighting that it can be a complicated process to allow farmers market vendors or other community-based organizations to provide food tastings or cooking demonstrations at different sites, and that there might be some issues with local jurisdiction requirements and applying for permitting across different local jurisdictions. Is that correct, Teresa?
Yes.
And so why don't you go ahead and jump in, please?
Okay. The idea here isn't that there's not already some information in the COMAR standards or certifications that people can get for safely doing tastings. It was more that it would be helpful to have a universal permitting process that would allow recipients to conduct the sampling season long in community-based food access settings, so that could, we know the power of tasting food, and so it would increase the purchase of the local food and increase opportunities and increase consumer confidence if a farmer or another organization, another entity that would do a tasting could have a singular permitting process that would point to already existing programs.
Well said. Thank you so much, Teresa. Any questions for Teresa or anyone else who participated in this recommendation? Okay, moving on. Oh, go ahead, Lorian.
Sure. I just reacting to the recommendation, I'm wondering if that would basically sort of mean that in the recommendation that counties would not have county level streamlining, or if that's part of the sort of vision for the recommendation that all the sort of permits, because I know in Montgomery County we have the 1-day permit for offering free samples. And I'm wondering if that would mean that counties then wouldn't have to have their own process.
That's the goal, Lorian, is that there would be some state one for it that would alleviate that kind of need for having to do single day or multiple markets, or if farmers go to various counties, having to learn the rules across counties and jurisdictions. But that obviously food safety would still be accounted for and that people would still have a permit. It would just be, a kind of different type of permit.
Awesome. Thanks, Lisa.
Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you so much. Any other questions on this one? Okay, the pop-up markets. This is the one that I was confused about earlier, Teresa. Sorry about that. So this one is suggesting that local jurisdictions should identify designated locations for temporary farm sales in healthy food priority areas. So there is often a barrier where a vendor might be interested in setting up shop and in specific communities, but they don't really know where they can do so or where they might be permitted to do so. And so the idea is that the local jurisdictions would have a designated place that farmers and other local food sales can occur in this specific spot. Is that right, Teresa?
Yes, that it would be identified, maybe the Department of Planning and a community could identify these sites and would make it easier to have pop-up markets. We know pop-up markets are here to stay. We welcome pop-up markets, but it's not always known where is the best place to have them.
Any questions about this one? I guess I have one, Teresa, which is I'm curious if the vision would be, so it would be a designated place on public land, I'm guessing, if the government is the local governments are supposed to identify a location. And so would the idea be like setting up at like a community center or setting up at a park, or what? Did you have any examples of like what the vision would be for these locations?
I do think we have examples in there, and I just closed the recommendation here. I have it. Let me see. Yeah, we had an example from Connecticut that how they did with food trucks, and we're not trying to confuse things with food trucks, but places that are good for food trucks may also be good for pop-up markets. So yes, we did include some examples here. Lisa, did you have anything more to add?
Yeah, that was a great question. I was trying to remember if the one in Connecticut that was food trucks, if it was just public or if it was others, and I don't remember.
And I don't think we specified it had to be public.
Yeah. For some reason, my memory, and I can pull it up and look at it too, I just don't have it at my fingertips. I feel like it was beyond public ones. The one in Connecticut is an example. So
and they would do it in conjunction with food system partners. They wouldn't, so it wouldn't just be public.
But I think the idea was to identify places, and this has come up as pop-up markets have tried to, where some even offices are public entities rent space, and therefore they don't know if they can even have the pop-up market there. So I think there's a lot of barriers to pop-up markets. So even if it becomes only public places, just knowing where people can have pop-up markets and having these identified would eliminate a whole host of questions that come up prior that often seem to, hinder the ability to have them. So this was kind of to try to create a guide that people could, really create and do this really quickly and have access to, a host of places where they could have them.
And in our implementation strategies, we said issue clear guidance on how to use those designated spaces for mobile pop-up markets where necessary, create streamlined processes or fee structures for the use of these spaces for that specific purpose. For example, one point of guidance might be to clarify any relevant local zoning caps or restrictions on holding concurrent events, articulate a strategy to make this information publicly available statewide, and then institute an annual or biannual review and updates for those designated spaces.
Thank you so much, Teresa and Lisa. Any questions on this one? Okay, hearing none, I think, Teresa, you're off the hook now. Thank you so much for your help, and Lisa as well. This next one is, thank you, is the next version of the food insecurity map that the council has pitched, and I believe every single annual report to date. And so one exciting thing that has happened this year is the council has made contact with staff members from the Department of Information Technology, and they have helped create a beta version of the food insecurity map using indicators that the council identified as necessary components of such a resource. And so this recommendation is kind of building off of that, showing how an improved, like higher level version of such a resource would be necessary and beneficial for stakeholders and our lawmakers. Meg, did you want to say more about this one, or anyone else who worked on this recommendation?
Yeah, I'm happy to. And anyone else who's on the call, please join in. It was a great proof of concept exercise where the Department of Information Technology was able to dedicate a resource to building a version of an ArcGIS map. They were able to access data sources, both from that they have access to from other state agencies. And then there's just a lot of data that's available inside ArcGIS itself. So it was kind of, if you consider it, it was kind of we called it proof of concept. It was kind of a rough draft. So if you remember in previous years, we were very clear about the data layers that we think are relevant to visualize in a ArcGIS food insecurity map. And so we followed along with that as kind of the backbone of what we were looking for. So the team pulled everything over. So it's all there. It's still not usable. Too much information, not enough synthesis. And how do we, the map, if you think about the map as like all the ingredients are on the table, how do we know how to make, what kind of soup it's going to make? Or how do we know how to make 6 different kinds of soup using the data that's the ingredients that are on the table? So the recommendation, we thought we were going into this with like, yep, challenge solved, and we got an answer, but we realized we don't, and we still need a human resource to be in the mix to not only keep the data fresh and updated and all those good things, but also to understand what is the story that the map can tell, and to make sure that the map is able to tell that story. So a couple of ways that we identified in the recommendation that the map would be able to function at its intended level with additional resource would be that it would generate some kind of food security index. So that would look at all the kind of the layers that are on the map, as you know, those would be social determinants of health, transportation access, food assistance availability, program usage, things like that, proximity to retail, and then create some kind of indicator that would show areas of higher need versus areas of different levels of need. So that's one thing that we think it will be needed in terms of being able to create a map that can be used by state agencies and state employees, and also the other, you know, external constituents that we think would benefit from having such a map. So So that's kind of where we landed. And we worked in really close partnership with the Department of Information Technology, which was amazing, and also had some great support from the Montgomery County Office of Food Systems Resilience. Juan Cruz participated, and he was just an amazing contributor to the process, very knowledgeable, a real expert in this work. So we had a great team around the table, and feel really good about the recommendation that we put forward. And just the last thing I'll say is, as Annika said, this recommendation is required by the legislation. So we have made a recommendation every year. So this year we went into it saying, how are we going to get some attention? So we think we really moved the work forward in a way that hopefully will get picked up by our legislators and make some additional progress on this, so that we can check the box on what the legislation is asking for.
Amazing. Thank you, Meg. And one thing I wanted to reiterate about this recommendation too is my understanding is the proposal is to kind of take this beta version of the map that you've created as a launching point, but a dashboard that's user friendly and like actually useful is still very much needed. And that's something that dedicated staff is needed to help carry forward and maintain. I also wanted to remind folks that this is one of the recommendations that the Maryland General Assembly asked for additional information on from our co-chair Nancy Nunn in the fall last year. So there is interest there, I believe. Any questions for Meg or other folks who worked on this recommendation? Meg, where does the beta version live? Can members see it now?
It is. I can find a link to it. It's on the Do It website somewhere. I do believe it's publicly accessible. I think they've got it pretty well tucked away because it's a beta version. But yeah, I'll share out a link with you as soon as I can put my hands on it. I'll try to look for it now, actually.
So Meg, can I ask you one question? In other conversations outside of this work, we've heard from different agencies that they're really concerned about the loss of data in the future, of data not being sent down from the federal government or collected. And I wondered if there was any conversation about that as you were establishing.
Yeah, that's a great question. We did not really get into that, we didn't really discuss that possibility. We were seeing it as more of an additive opportunity, in the sense that state agencies would, with agreements, be more likely to share their data with other state agencies. And so we thought that, some of the things like SNAP eligibility or SNAP usage, which is something that's very protected because of personally identifying information, is something that's not easy to get. So we thought about it more that it would be a positive, but I do think you're right. I have been hearing the same thing as well. So I think that would be a factor. Now, most publicly available data sets are not current. They are a year, 2, 3 old. So it's something that certainly, if it does come through, it might be more of a future area, but I'll definitely bring that back into the conversation as we go. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Laura has asked in the chat, pending funding, are you planning to create a dashboard internally, or are you looking for an external partner?
So the way the map would work, is that it would sit on the Do It website. It would have a landing page that would help, with narrative and kind of the why behind the project, and some explanation of how to use the map. And from there, you would click into it. So the idea is it would sit on the Do It website, assuming that Do It agrees to this, which I don't know if they have yet. And the dashboard, I mean, my understanding of ArcGIS, the way we use it at the Maryland Food Bank, is we have a little tutorial on how to use the map, but it's really very user generated. So we didn't really get into conversations about a dashboard, but we focus more on just creating the map product itself.
Great. Thank you, Laura, and thank you, Meg.
Of course.
Any other comments on this one or questions? I thought that was very helpful. Thank you so much, Meg. And moving on to environment and production, just want to say one last shout out. Well done, distribution and access. You really did a lot of work, and I was very amazed at the high quality of work that you produced, and clearly the dedicated team effort. So thank you, everybody. Cameron, you had something?
Yeah, hi, thank you. I just wanted to jump in while it's on my mind and before we got too far away. This may be relevant also moving forward, but I'm at the Department of Aging, and we were having a meeting internally with our legislative team just a few days ago about how the timeline for legislative proposals has been moved up this year. So they're actually requesting all tentative proposals by the end of this month for legislation. Usually it's like the end of September. So that's a big change. And it's actually interesting that at least two of these recommendations were things that we just kind of discussed on our own as part of the food landscape. So particularly the map that we just discussed and the local food council recommendation was brought up. So they're great ideas. I'm just wondering if there's anything that can be done now within the next 25 days to maybe move some of these forward. I know there's a longer process that we're working in, so how might that play out, and what kind of opportunities might there be for legislatively supporting some of these ideas? It's probably a big question.
I don't know if they're still on the call, but we're lucky enough to have two state lawmakers on this council. We have Senator Katie Freihester and Delegate Lord Charkoudian on the council, and they may be able to speak to this better than me. But
Sure.
I think that part of, oh, go ahead, Delegate Charkoudian.
I can, sorry. Yeah, so, it's interesting because while we were talking, I was thinking the same thing. I was going to wait until the end to ask about this, but I think that your question, Kieran, is about if it's going to be a departmental bill, right? Because that's your timeline, I think, that you're working under. This has the July 1st starting point. Obviously, we can put in a bill, and my general rule of thumb is that if this group requests that I put in a bill, I usually do. I think that gives us more flexibility. So I think that if any of these need to be departmental bills, they do need to be moved forward pretty quickly. But if any of them are going to be legislator bills, then, we can start to move things. And I usually like to pre-file if I can. So October, but we don't have to. So even December. What I will say, though, this was the comment that I was going to make, if I can kind of shift to the second piece. I'm happy to answer questions about legislation that I could put in or that Katie and I could put in. I will say that one of the questions I had, for example, when we were talking about the permitting or the things that relate to health permits and so on, is I have always thought that one of the real benefits of this council and the cross-jurisdictional nature of the membership is that we can work through issues with agencies. So, I think it would be really valuable for the final recommendation on the health permitting issues, as one example, to have formal input from the health department so that before we're drafting legislation that, again, we have more time on, because I can put it in several months. But we're going in knowing that the Department of Health or Human Services or MDA or whichever agency is involved really thinks that the kinks have been worked out of the suggestion. And so I think that the shift in our timing for this council is really good, because I think it gives both agencies time to consider if they want any of these recommendations to be their priority bills. But for those that are going to be our bills as legislators, it also gives time to work out details with agencies. So hopefully that's helpful in thinking about it. If folks have other questions or thoughts, I'm happy to respond.
Thank you so much, Delegate Charkoudian. And I did want to chime in on your comment that that was part of the reason why we've added in this state agency review process, is to help align the recommendations with what is feasible and desired within the state agencies. And so, for instance, with those health-related, like food safety recommendations, we did get feedback from the Maryland Department of Health on them, and are incorporating them into the versions that will be shared with the committees later on.
Right. Fantastic.
Thank you so much, Delegate Charkoudian. Anything else before we move on to environment and production? Okay, well, there are 5 recommendations coming out of the Environment and Production Committee this year. I'm going to let Dr. Lansing take the lead on this one, because I know that this has been her focus with this year's recommendations. This one is on agricultural labor, workforce development, and this is something that the Department of Labor provided a lot of contribution to as well. Dr. Lansing?
Yeah, thank you. So on this one, we really tried to understand what are the avenues for workforce development, specifically for for ag labor, thinking about the gaps that we have, and especially for small scale and medium scale farmers. And what we basically found is that there are these Department of Education CTE programs, but they end as soon as, the person's out of 12th grade. And there's also the agricultural workforce programs, but you really need a sponsor for those. And then you get like a trade organization, and you get tax credits for participating. But there isn't really anything dedicated to agriculture, either in the Department of Labor programs or in the CTE programs. So the idea is to have a commission to bring these groups together to try to really understand the issues facing ag safety, and thinking about whether it's Farm Bureau or others who could be a sponsor for this kind of stopgap program, to go from a high school student to a more farm manager position in an official apprenticeship program. So you really, for the apprenticeship program, you need a sponsor, and we don't have a sponsor. So the idea is, can we create a commission to really understand the unique challenges facing the agricultural workforce program, and figure out what we can do as various state agencies around the table, so also Department of Agriculture, to have a more seamless workforce development program. So the recommendation is a commission.
Thank you, Dr. Lansing. And I think that the responses that we saw from the Department of Labor really emphasized that they saw it as a very helpful suggestion to have a dedicated focus on agriculture in their department, because right now the only person who looks at agricultural labor is the person who helps with the H-2A program, if I'm not mistaken. Are there any questions?
Yeah, and so we did talk to the H-2A program as well, and the challenge with that program, that's we're bringing foreign workers in, is you have to have housing, and they have to be you have to go and have them certified that it's safe and secure for your farm workers. And so that works very well for very large farms, but really we have this gap in our small to medium farmers who also need labor resources, as well as beginning farmers and others who are kind of getting into farming but don't have the H-2A level operations.
Any questions for Dr. Lansing? One of the things I'll just share, Norton Pereira, who spoke with the Environment and Production Committee in the fall, responded with very enthusiastically about this recommendation, but did highlight the aging workforce in the agricultural industry, and how we are seeing a declining number of people going into the agricultural industry. And so having more of a dedicated focus within the Department of Labor to bring in new and beginning farmers, and especially young farmers, was a desire of his to help implement. Any other thoughts on this one? Okay, moving on. early warning weather system. Thank you, Dr. Lansing. Early warning weather system to alert farmers. And so I know that Lorian helped with this one, and Nancy, I believe, as well. This one is about creating a system for farmers to better prepare for extreme weather events at the local level, and have more support and more time to plan for climate related resilience and in their agricultural endeavors. So like extreme heat events or flooding, other things like that. It would be helpful for the agricultural community to have an alert system to help them navigate these challenging moments throughout the season. Did anyone who worked on this recommendation want to say anything else about this?
So I think part of the recommendation, we focused on the Mesonet system, which is a relatively new system in Maryland to collect more localized weather data, and it's been increased with numerous sites throughout the state. And what we've often heard from farmers, and I know Dr. Karki's not on the call, but he mentioned that he heard from several of the farmers that he worked with on the lower shore, is just for farmers to be able to get a better grasp of what they are seeing in terms of weather, to prepare not only for extreme weather events, but also to help them sort of get a sense of what might be planted to deal with, varying temperatures, water events, any type of events. And this was shared with MDEM, also shared with the University of Maryland, who also works on the Mesonet system. It was suggested that farmers could engage with the system through their cell phones and possibly be able to get a push when they receive a weather alert. So it's really building into a system that's already in place. It would probably suggest continuing the funding, but not increasing the funding. But that was the impetus behind this recommendation. Lauren, do you want to add anything?
Sure, Nancy, great summary. But I also wanted to add that the state climatologist office is also responsible for one of their duties is to work with the Maryland Mesonet system to get the information out. And so the recommendation is sort of also centered on just the information that the Mesonet system collects, just better ways of communicating and getting it out to farmers. So, as Nancy mentioned, making sure the website is optimized for use on the cell phones, making sure there are push notifications going out to farmers in instances of predicted heavy rainfall or extended drought conditions, like extended late frosts. So right now, Maryland has great data that they collect, but not a great way to get it out to farmers. So that's sort of the idea here.
Great, thank you both so much. Any questions on this one? Okay, hearing none, we're going to keep moving on. Great work to everyone on that work group. The next one is also a climate smart ag topic, a collaborative approach to resource sharing. This one, the idea is to create a one-stop shop where farmers, researchers, there's a typo there, sorry, and technical service providers could access links to current data on how weather predictions will impact the ag season and help the agricultural community navigate climate related issues. Is there anything else that I'm missing or anyone want to chime in on this?
No, I think it's very similar to the distribution and access desire to streamline permitting, in that it's just, farmers, researchers, it's difficult to technical service providers to visit the many sites that have information. that could help a farmer. So we thought if there's one location that they could go to that was identified, that they could be looking at for climate related, both grants as well as programs, and data, it would just be a helpful use. And having spoken with both MDA and others, it sounds like this, again, is being suggested maybe for the state climatologist site. So again, Lauren, I don't know if you have anything to add.
No, Nancy, that basically encompasses it.
Thank you. Any questions on the one-stop shop recommendation? Okay. The next one, statewide guidance for local food procurement. So this one was reviewed by the Department of General Services, and the idea was to create a state document on to better support institutional buyers and producers on how to navigate local food purchasing at the state level. I believe Joe was working on this one, Joe Malone. Do you want to say anything about this?
Yeah, I think you covered it for the most part, but yeah, state-specific procurement guidance document for both buyers and producers that outlines the process of being able to work to procure more food locally. So that's sort of the gist of it.
Great, thank you so much, Joe. Any questions on this procurement document proposal?
I just
I do. Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Did you hear from, last I heard, did we hear back from the Department of General Services? I know this is something from Commerce, but can you just respond, give an overview of their response?
Yeah, so overall, the feedback from DGS was relatively minor. I would say the real edit that was substantive related to a legislative mandate that would direct DGS to work on this deliverable. And so they just deleted that from the actual recommendation itself, the component where there's that legislative mandate component. And so that was the only real major change.
So does that imply they're willing to do it without a legislative mandate, or I guess, what does that mean?
Yeah, so it's unclear to me, but that's what that implies in my head. But I think it would be good to follow up with them on that. It's a good point.
Thank you, Joe.
This is Delegate Chikridian. That's a really good point. I'd be interested in the answer to that as well. I think I'll just point out the governor just vetoed my bill that required DGS to work with MSDE to do sort of stuff along these lines. We're not totally clear what was behind that veto, but it's an area that I'm concerned about. I would just add that guidance, I think that we want to make sure that guidance that does come out from DGS is clear about also, so it sounds like this is sort of guidance, voluntary guidance, suggestions, pathways. We do have a law in the state about certain agencies, right? The state agencies having to, and then agencies that are sort of under state procurement, having to demonstrate their attempts to procure the 20% certified local farmers. So I think somehow there's a lot of confusion that that's a goal, in the sense like it's a goal that's just out there and maybe would it be nice, but there's actually pretty explicit law about the reporting and about dates, about like the demonstration of an attempt, and that if the 20% isn't met, the reporting requires demonstration that the prime contractors attempted to contact local farmers and why they weren't able to engage. And so the answers could be about aggregation, the answers could be price, the answers could be quality, the answers could be gap certification. But so far every agency in the state has been in violation of this law. And so I think that whenever we're talking about technical assistance, I think it's really important that like I would like to add to this recommendation, if it's possible, something that reiterates what the law actually says and what people's legal requirements are. So thus far, every agency in the state has ignored their legal requirements under this law, with the exception of the Department of Ag, who's put together the structure for it. But I think it is important to remind everyone that these are not just nice things to talk about, and here's a nice flow chart if you'd like to do it, but there are agencies in the state that are required by law, and there's very specifics to sort of how they get there. So I don't know if there's a way to reiterate that within this particular recommendation, but I'd like to see that if it's possible to do that.
Thank you so much, Delegate Charkoudian, and I made a note of that suggestion. Jesse?
Yeah, I've been coming in and out, so I apologize if I missed it, but I want to reiterate, I think in the same light of what Delegate Charkoudian was saying, we need to make sure that, and the legislature as well, when they're having these conversations about DGS and so forth, because I know that we faced issues, given the way that the laws are currently, or the contracts are currently written within the state, it makes it extremely prohibitive for producers to be able to get their products in, because there's line items of certain specifications or so forth. So I think there has to be something said to that there's a lot of producers out there that want to do it, but then when the rules are so finite, in some ways, just because that's the way they've been forever, it makes it impossible for those producers. And these producers are shipping, across the state, across the region, across the country in some instances, but they can't because of the way that the contracts from DGS are written. So and maybe that was mentioned, but I just wanted to point that out, that that's been a huge issue for purveyors, farmers, to get their product in, is sometimes the way that the contracts are written state that it has to go through a distributor. It has to go through this set, thing. So.
Well, I think, can I just jump in? I don't know how, maybe we want to schedule a different call to go over this. I don't understand why there's still so much confusion about the law that's been on the books since 2021, but
No, Delegate, I understand that the law.
So can let me just finish, please?
Yeah.
I think that the issue that you're raising is exactly what we're trying to force with the law. So if, let's say, Aramark gets the contract, right, and it's written in a way that fully excludes local producers, the law would require that they demonstrate how they tried to bring local producers in. And when they request a waiver, it would have to list out specifically the issues that you're describing. So that doesn't solve the issues that you're describing, but to date, no one has even followed the law, which doesn't say you have to hit 20%, but it says you have to demonstrate your process. Because I think, to your point, once we start to see those waivers, once we start to see all the excuses that get made, once we start to see all the reasoning, that's when we can go after the structures of DGS procurements. That's when we start to go, okay, this is the kind of investment we have to make in aggregation. Because the problem up until 2021, when we passed the law, and since then, has been, anecdotally, we hear what you just said from producers, which I believe is probably a significant piece of it. From distributors, we hear they can't aggregate. From prime contractors, we hear they're not GAP certified. But nobody has actually, what we have not done, that the law requires, is demonstrate the attempt to put them into the prime contract or the distribution contract, and then demonstrate why it couldn't be done, and put that in writing and submit it to the Department of Agriculture. And I think until we have that, it's very hard to know exactly what structures we're restructuring. And that was why we put that into law 4 years ago. And so this is my point about any guidance that gets put out there, I think there's a real need for guidance on just follow the law as it currently is. I mean, that we could talk about all the changes that we need, but if people started following the law, we would start to get a really clear picture of where the pressure points are that are going to maximize the likelihood of producers getting in.
That's fine, Delegate. I'll reach out to you because we're on the same page in some ways. And I can give you some more details in a private setting about some pushback and issues that we've been facing as a producer that wants to sell and that wants to go through, but they've not been cooperative. But you and I can discuss that at a separate time, not in front of the council. So
sorry, I agree with you 100%. It is
no, we're on the same team.
Right, the state agencies, many of whom are here, so let me just say it while everyone's listening, are not following the law. And so that's like the crux of the problem, and we can't get to like part 2 of fixing the contracts until we get through part 1, which is follow what's already there, for one, and 2, get the reporting in demonstrating that you tried and that whatever the reasons are, gap certification or whatever else.
Thank you so much, Delegate Charkoudian and Jesse. Any other comments? Oh, Jesse, did you want to say something else? Any other comments or questions on this one?
I'll just add briefly, this is Stephanie Lansing from University of Maryland, that we've been in a lot of conversations with the procurement at University of Maryland. And I think, I'm happy to be involved in any conversations, with the representative and Jesse. And one of the things that we found is, one, we have existing contracts, but 2, it's really difficult for us to know what's local and what's not through whether it's, our existing contracts, whether it's for the fishermen's or through Cisco or whatever it might be. And so we're working through that right now. And I think that's part of the challenge is, where are you at right now? It's difficult for us to actually give a number, and then, which they're doing. And then how can you get there if you really don't have clarity on what your local procurement is through your existing contract? So that's been our challenge, and we're working on it.
I think that our goal has been to put more of a requirement. If you want to contract with the state of Maryland, Cisco, Airmark, whoever you are, if you want to contract with the state of Maryland, any state agency, you need to play ball with this. And until the state agencies put that requirement as part of the contracts with their prime contractors, it's going to be the state agencies who are left looking around trying to figure out what's local. But if the contracts get written properly, then the requirement is on, and Cisco is not going to walk away from the University of Maryland because we told them they had to do this, right? So the requirement's on them to have to work in partnership with you on that.
Yeah, so it sounds like what I'm hearing here is making sure that we look back at the language of this procurement document and make sure that it's not only directed at the state agencies, but also very specific to the aggregators and the distributors on what this requirement is. So almost the audience being not only the state delegators, but also the businesses that are associated with this procurement process.
Well, because it's like the way state agencies are required to work with their prime contractors to meet MBE goals. Mm-hmm. The law directs state agencies, but the ones who have to, the state agencies use their contracts to meet that law, right? So the law, there's not a state law that directs Cisco to do something. The state law directs the University of Maryland in their contract with Cisco to do something, right? It still is in the contract.
Right. So we need to make sure the state agencies include that in their contracts, basically.
The law says they have to, yes.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lansing, and thank you again, Delegate Charkoudian. That's very helpful. the last recommendation to discuss is one that I know Martin from MDA helped work on quite a bit, as well as I believe Nancy Nunn contributed to this one. This one is establish scalable and specific standards for farm processing and production of value-added agriculture. Does anyone who worked on this recommendation want to provide a little bit of a summary or share more about the thought process behind this one? I don't think we have Martin on the call today. Secretary Addix.
Good morning. I will just say two things. Martin is preparing for a big presentation he's giving in about an hour about a lot of the things value-added ag related that he's picked up on as he's traveled across the state, meeting with counties and farmers and regulators within. This recommendation is important because it begins to, it really adds some flesh to our recommendations as a department and through his position in his report that is impending to encourage agencies and their delegated local regulatory offices to begin coordinating and streamlining their farm processing and food production standards. So it's very helpful.
Thank you so much, Secretary Addix. Anyone else?
No, I would just say that during the work group process, we actually held a meeting with farmers, ag marketing specialists, a really broad range of people from the ag community. And this was very important to them. And they explained how it impacted their businesses and the increase in value-added products in the state. So
thank you so much, Nancy. Anyone else? Okay, with that, we wrap up all of the recommendations that have been pitched. And I did want to give communication and coordination the opportunity to share any updates since the last meeting in April. Though they don't typically write recommendations, they have still convened with the local food councils and perhaps had other things happen that they might want to share. Michelle, I don't think Heather is on the call today. Michelle, did you want to add anything on behalf of communication and coordination? Oh no, Heather is here.
I don't really have a lot to add. I think since the real big push during the legislative session and then the reconvening with the local food councils, I think we're working to plan for the future, and we welcome, again, folks' feedback on ways that we can improve the way that committee functions to support the larger council, because that's what we do in this sort of interim off period. But I will pause and see if Heather has anything to add if she's on the call.
I am, and hi, sorry, I was by phone for the first half, and Annika, it's so nice to see you. No, I think that as Michelle shared, this is a little bit of a quiet period for our work, though I think we are really internally discussing what are some strategies for engaging legislators and others in the off season when there may be more space and room to debrief on the previous session, understand what's coming up, and also work with policymakers to potentially move, these recommendations forward. So I still encourage everybody who has input on how we could make the FSRC's engagement in the General Assembly process more value added, more supportive to the work that's happening locally. So just encourage people to still reach out to Michelle or myself with feedback as if you have it at any time. Thanks.
Great, thank you both so much. And we have just a little bit of time left for our council roundtable. This is the time when we like to open it up to council members to provide any additional updates they might want to share. I know that federal activities has been a topic of conversation this spring with the council during these roundtable discussions. And we usually like to invite the local food councils to share any updates as well. So kicking it off, does anyone from the local food council collaborative want to share anything?
So I can share two things. Both of them are actually good news. One of them is the fact that following the Eastern Shore Food Insecurity Symposium, regional councils are in the process of being formed on the Upper Shore, Lower Shore, and Mid Shore. So they're working together and also individually to identify their needs and how they might bring resources to their different regions. I'm also going to give a shout out to the Brinsfield interns, which is a collaborative internship between the Hughes Center and the Ag Law Education Initiative. They are all on the call, and a lot of their work this summer will focus on the food system. So if there are additional research needs to really flesh out some of these recommendations, please get in touch with me because we certainly can put some resources to that. There's also, we've been given an intern to work on the needs of the Eastern Shore Food Policy Councils and some of their research. But I would encourage anybody at the other food councils, if there's areas that we can work on that would also assist your work, again, please let us know of the research needs.
Thank you so much, Nancy. That's really great to hear. Teresa? Teresa, you're muted.
Okay. Allegheny County Health Department did receive a grant for developing a CSA program for SNAP recipients. So we're happy to have that, and we'll be working on that. We already are working on it, and that will go for this season. And then Allegheny County Western Maryland Food Council is also working on the second cohort of the CARET Community Agriculture Resilience Audit Tool with the North American Food Systems Network. So we're in the midst of that process of completing a food assessment. And I had one more thing. County United Way received a Care First Blue Cross Blue Shield grant in Allegheny and Garrett counties. They're working with the Food Council to provide food boxes. We'll be providing 1,200 food boxes this growing season as well. 100 boxes at 12 different events that will be not only providing food, but social determinants of health resources from community partners at these events. And 8 of the 12 events will have food demos. So we're excited about that. Thank you.
That's all very great news. Thank you so much, Teresa. And I look forward to chatting with you more about the CARET process as you get further into it.
And
Lori, did you?
I just wanted to say very thankful to Frederick County Food Council and Michelle for sharing the work that they're doing there with us as well. And we're working with Data Driven Frederick in at Hood College, who the Frederick County Food Council worked with as well. So it's very, very nice. I'm very grateful and for Michelle and her team. So thank you. Yes.
Great. Thank you so much, Teresa. And Lorian?
Sure. Yeah, I just wanted to share, sort of some of the good news that wanted to thank, our partners at MDA and Future Harvest for reviewing our climate smart agricultural grants. Montgomery County Food Council has partnered with the Montgomery County Green Bank to be able to offer 15 farmers funding directly for their climate smart agricultural projects. And we are announcing the award, or notifying the awardees today, being able to announce them next week. And we're very excited. I wanted to say also, Nancy, I'd love to get in touch with you because we're moving on to the phase of the research part of the project, which is the collecting, basically a project to describe the barriers that farmers experience to implementing the climate smart ag projects, with a focus on the financial barriers specifically. So that's really exciting. I also wanted to say, in the realm of streamlining the legal processes, we have assembled a sort of demonstration for farmers market sampling, or one-day vendor sampling. So we'll be also, researching and coming up with a description of, barriers that small farms and food and beverage businesses face when going to offer samples, which, we'll be in touch with some of y'all about that. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lorian. Anyone else from the food councils? And then we will open it up to the rest of the membership. If anyone else would like to share any updates before we adjourn, this is your chance. Okay, hearing nothing, I want to thank you all for taking the time to meet with us this morning. It is great to be back with you all, and I thought that was a very helpful and productive conversation about all of the recommendations. So I hope that if there are any additional questions that pop up, you'll feel free to send them my way, and I can share them with fellow council members or help facilitate conversations as needed. And otherwise, committee members, stay tuned for your voting forms next Tuesday on the 10th. All right. With that, I'll say take care, everyone. Thank you so much. Hope you have a good rest of your week.
Thanks, Annika. Great to see you.
Thank
Welcome
you.
back.